In under a month, a balcony or small yard can turn into its own little ecosystem. Wings, movement, that steady buzz, without big costs or fussy routines. Today on Senior Garden Club, we'll walk through a simple, real shift. 10 plants that draw in pollinators, easy to find in North America, good in full sun or part shade, even in pots, with blooms you'll actually enjoy looking at. You'll see how to pick them and pair them so flowers and visitors stick around almost all year. A pesticide-free corner where nature comes back and stays. We're starting with number 10. Not bad, just a plant that asks a bit more from you. Highbush blueberry, Vaccinium corymbosum, is one of those that pays you back in fruit, but only if you get what it wants. In spring, it sets little bell-shaped flowers, and that's when bumblebees shine, shaking those blooms with their buzz, improving pollination so you see it later in the harvest. Here's the part not to skip. It needs acidic soil, pH 4.5 to 5.5, with plenty of organic matter. If your soil runs neutral and you don't plan to adjust, you'll see weaker harvests year after year. But if you can set up a spot that suits it, organic mulch, steady moisture, it becomes a way to get pollinators moving while the rest of the garden is still waking up. When it's in peak bloom, don't crowd it with other flowers right on top of it. Pollinators scatter, and you want them circling those blueberry blossoms again and again. Best practical move: food for pollinators before and after, not competing with the blueberry itself. A sunny hedge of blueberries with some light wind usually does well, if you keep mulch, pine, shredded leaves, clean sawdust. Watch pH. If it creeps above 5.5, elemental sulfur helps, but not right away. You apply it months ahead. Let it do its slow work. Drip irrigation helps too. Nothing fancy, just the difference, in a dry spring, between a strong bloom and a weak one. Number 9 is a tree that does what very few plants can. It feeds insects very early, when it still feels like winter. Black willow, Salix nigra, blooms in late winter or early spring and becomes a lifeline for the first bumblebee queens and native bees when there's almost nothing else. If you've got a ditch, a swale, pond edge, or a damp corner, this willow doesn't just feed, it holds the bank and gives that edge some structure. One detail people miss: there are male and female trees, and having both can stretch the window for pollinators. If willows are already nearby, one row may be enough. It also propagates easily, cuttings while it's resting. Set in moist soil, just don't let the whole site stay waterlogged. That said, willow isn't a right next to the beds because it looks nice plant. It throws shade, spreads roots, and can pull water from other plants. Put it on the edge of the property, like a useful neighbor. Out of the way, its own space. You can control height with winter pruning to let more light in. And if you truly want to support pollinators, here's a key point. Avoid exotic hybrids. They can shift bloom timing for your area and, without meaning to, throw off when and where insects move. Planting and mixing several Salix species can give you several weeks of pollen in a row. That gets populations started early and keeps them going. It lands at number 9 because the benefit's big, but it does want constant moisture. Number 8 is a low shrub I like for a simple reason. It stays out of the way. Ceanothus americanus, New Jersey tea, blooms May through July and usually tops out around 2 to 3 feet. Great for edges or a low hedge. Nectar at a key time, brings in native bees and butterflies, and doesn't steal sun from beds or pots. It handles sandy or rocky soils if they drain well. In compacted soil, it weakens and flowers less. So the trick is to set a looser, better drained area. Mix in some gravel or coarse sand. Care is straightforward. Don't dig deeply right over the roots. They don't like sudden disturbance. A light trim after flowering makes it bushier, and next year it looks better. Its real value is bridging that gap from mid-spring into early summer, when a lot of garden plants are still building and not yet blooming. Near pome fruits, apple or pear, It counts twice: food for pollinators and better airflow, which usually helps. Number 7 is a steady summer worker. Agastache foeniculum. If you've caught that anise scent walking by, you know the one. It's not just the flowers, it announces itself. Those spikes pull in bees, butterflies, and hummingbirds from mid-morning through the afternoon, and it keeps at it. While others bloom and fade, Agastache just carries on. Doesn't seem to tire out. Give it sun and average or lean soil that drains. And here's the practical bit. Too much fertilizer means more leaves, fewer flowers. Looks lush, but less useful for what we're after here. With moderate water it does fine, and once established, it handles a normal summer with little help. A gentle pinch early makes it branch and set more spikes. Nice if you want one plant to read as a full clump without fussing over it. And there's a bonus you notice over months in a mixed garden. Those flowers also feed hoverflies and parasitic wasps, good allies against aphids. I leave the stems through winter, not just out of laziness, though sometimes that too, because they shelter insects and later drop seed the birds use. Number 6 is the annual sunflower, Helianthus annuus, which in summer is like a big sign saying, "Food here." Some plants attract. And then there's sunflower. Bees spot it from a long way off. The heads offer nectar and pollen, and often concentrate native bees right when summer crops are producing hard. In a garden, a row to the north can act as a windbreak, gives tomatoes a bit of shelter without heavy shade. Sow in mid-spring, when soil is above about 10 to 12 degrees Celsius. If you sow again every 2 or 3 weeks, you stagger bloom into late summer, a simple way to keep insect traffic going longer. If your goal is pollinators, avoid pollen-free varieties. Pollen producers get many more visits, and that extra activity pulls in hoverflies and parasitic wasps too. Regular watering gives bigger heads and less lodging. If wind is an issue, 2 rows with moderate spacing help them support each other, like a little backup. Number 6 because it's easy to manage, but in light soils it needs steadier water and a little staking or attention so it doesn't go over. Number 5 is a pretty plant that also works hard for insects. Penstemon digitalis blooms from late spring into early summer, with tubular flowers that bees, butterflies, and hummingbirds favor. It likes sun and medium fertility soil. It also rides out short dry spells, good if you miss a day of watering because life happens. After its main flush, a light trim tidies it and encourages new growth. No need to live with the shears in your hand. If you want it to serve as a signal for bees, and then send them on to cucurbits or other flowers, plant several together. Easier to spot, doesn't get lost in the mix. And a small habit that helps a lot. Leave a little bare patch nearby, no mulch. Many bees nest in bare ground, and that tiny detail can carry a local population from one year to the next. If you like starting from seed, fall sowing works. Winter chill helps the seed wake up and sprout right on time. Number 4 is a steady performer, Echinacea purpurea. It carries early summer with blooms that draw bees and butterflies, and it has that quality gardeners value, stays strong. It tolerates hot sun, clay soil, and brief drought. If you want it to be a true magnet, singles usually draw more than doubles, since the good stuff is easier to reach. It does better in a group. For pollinators, a block of Echinacea is a clear stop they revisit, not a lone plant they bump into by chance. When bloom ends, you get to choose the finish. Leave some seed heads and you feed birds and get a little self-seeding. If you want a cleaner look, cut some and leave some. I like that middle ground. Shows care, leaves room for life. Go easy on high nitrogen fertilizers. The same trap again. Lots of leaf, fewer flowers. Every 4 or 5 years, divide clumps to refresh vigor and improve bloom. Paired with Monarda and Asclepias, you chain midsummer flowers and keep visits steady. Number 4 because it's reliable, tolerant, and steady. Number 3 is the plant that saves the season's back end, when many others are done. Solidago, goldenrods, come through in late summer and fall. For bees and bumblebees, they're critical, with pollen and nectar right when winter reserves are being built. New colonies form or new queens prep, and pests are still around. Full sun and medium fertility soil suit them, and they last for years. Best placement is behind beds or along property edges, so they don't shade lower crops. If they get too tall, a June trim makes them more compact without losing fall bloom. Windy site? A simple support keeps them upright, and a yearly mix-up worth clearing. Goldenrod is almost never the main culprit for seasonal allergies. Folks confuse it with ragweed, which spreads pollen on the wind. Solidago relies on insects to move pollen, so it's not usually floating everywhere like the lighter stuff. Number 2 is a nectar magnet. Monarda fistulosa. In summer, right when the garden peaks, Monarda sets tubular blooms loaded with nectar. Bees, butterflies, some sphinx moths, and hummingbirds pile in. It blooms evenly June through August, and you can feel it. Stick around a minute, and the place is in motion. It reaches 3 to 4 feet, likes sun, and handles poor or heavy clay soils with moderate drought. In very hot summers, powdery mildew can show up. No need to turn it into a big drama. Improve airflow, water moderately, leave space between plants. Often it eases up. Maybe not gone, but managed without turning the garden into a chemical fight. Plant in groups, about 1 to 2 square meters, and you create food stations that guide how pollinators move. That makes visits elsewhere more predictable. It spreads by shallow rhizomes, so plan to divide or renew every 3 or 4 years. The center weakens over time. And one thing I tend to do, optional, leave the dry stems till spring. They shelter insects, and you save fall labor, which always stacks up. Number 2 for very high value, with care that mostly means don't let it get too dense and keep an eye on mildew. Number 1 is a plant that, when it fits, seems to pull every pollinator into the garden. Asclepias tuberosa takes the top spot for 2 reasons. It feeds monarch caterpillars, and it offers nectar to many insects, wild bees, hoverflies, for about 8 weeks between June and August. In gardens aiming for continuous bloom without constant watering, it covers a key stretch of summer. Once established, it needs little water, and in July, when watering, pests, and heat pile up, that's almost a gift. It prefers full sun and medium to dry soil. Here's the big condition. It has a deep taproot. It doesn't like being moved. If you're always shuffling pots, this one will ask to be left alone. Best to plant a root ball or direct sow in its permanent spot after a little planting. Care is simple. Clean stems only as needed. Fertilize modestly so you don't push leaves at the expense of flowers. And watch water competition if it's near heavy feeding crops. Leave seed heads in fall, and it self-seeds while supporting wildlife. If you want to expand the patch, sow on purpose into small open spots with visible soil. No need for perfect. Design-wise, it pairs well with Echinacea and Monarda. Each has its height, they bloom in sequence, and they don't throw shade over productive areas. First place for real staying power, the number of visitors it brings, and because if you respect that root, it asks for very little. Now, the promised part. Combinations that work, and the small detail that keeps your garden calling pollinators without you hovering over it. The easiest way is to think of the year in 3 phases: late winter to early spring, summer, and the season's end. Willow opens that first window when almost nothing else is feeding. Blueberry, if you've got acidic soil or can create it, builds on that start and gives you fruit besides. Then, mid-spring into early summer, Penstemon and Ceanothus keep things from going dark. When the real heat lands, Monarda, Echinacea, Agastache, sunflowers, and Asclepias form the summer core. Plenty of food, steady visits. Solidago then closes out fall, right when the rest slows down. The trick's not flashy, which is why it works. Continuity and shelter. Continuity and shelter. Continuity means there's always something in bloom. You get it by staggering sunflowers, planting perennials in groups, placing things with intention so you don't end up with a long gap. Shelter is 3 simple moves. First, no pesticides in that corner. Second, in winter, leave some dry stems and seed heads. Lots of helpful insects ride out the season there. Third, leave a small, quiet patch of bare soil for ground nesting bees. Put those together, and the garden stops being just a pretty spot. It starts supporting life. Over time, you see it in productivity. More visitors, better pollination, flowers performing like they haven't before. Bottom line, this matters. A garden works better when it offers flowers across the calendar, and when pollinators can find food for months, not just one nice weekend. Mix several of these plants and respect the light, drainage, and space each one needs, and you'll start seeing native bees, hoverflies, and butterflies with a steadiness that sneaks up on you. If there's one takeaway, make it this: 6 or more well-chosen, well-placed species beat any miracle plant. At Senior Garden Club, that's the goal. A plan that's realistic, brings some joy and life, without turning into a headache. Tell me what mix you'll try, who showed up first in your garden, and what worked best for you. If you feel like it, subscribe, comment, share, and we'll keep tuning it together.